Yeah, we have a freaking sick season of Marvel Snap cards on the way. This legit might be the coolest batch of cards I've ever done in one of these videos, because we did just get a new patch, which means we have some new data mined cards to discuss today. These are going to be landing in the September season, which is an Axis inversion season, which I guess Axis is an old Marvel Comics big crossover event where things get kind of mixed up. Good guys are bad guys are good, and characters combine, apparently, much like one of my thumbnails. Maybe that's why I like this so freaking much. As you can see here behind me with the Red Skull Onslaught combination, which is wild. But I mean, honestly, just some really crazy card designs. Marvel Snap cooked with this month. Now, that said, as always, these are data mined cards. These could change. Things could shift in power level. Technically, designs could be tweaked, although rarely does that ever happen at this stage. So let's go ahead and kick things off here with the card I thought looked the coolest. This is Red Onslaught. Now, do keep in mind, by the way, the logos for all the cards I've included in the video today are just ones I put together based on Red Skull's logo and Onslaught's logo with some color tweaks, or like handmade. I just spent like a few minutes making them. The logos aren't actually in the game yet, so these won't be the final logos, but I hate the way the cards look without them. They just look so weird and naked. So anyway, this is Red Onslaught, a 4/4 with ongoing, has 3 random ongoing abilities. So this is basically Ramatut. Ramatut is just on reveals, and this instead is ongoing. And I think this actually has even more potential than Ramatut. Ramatut is like one of those cards that's like kind of okay, but most people don't want to really embrace the risk. I do think ultimately this one's a little bit less risky. There are definitely still some rolls that could really hurt you. You know, you could roll a Red Skull, for instance, and buff your opponent's entire side of the board. Typhoid Mary, the classic ongoing effects that you want to turn off, Starbrand. Like, assuming those are in the pool, which I don't know, the Ramatut pool is actually curated a little bit so that it can't screw you too crazy hard, I think. It also seems to be weighted a little bit too, from what I can tell. So I don't know exactly how all that's going to shake out, right? We don't know, but none of those are like necessarily instantly game losing, unlike, some on reveals are so bad that they really could maybe lose you a game. And there are just a lot of really, really good ongoing effects that just kind of work. Unlike Ramatut, I think there's a lot of on reveals that don't necessarily really do anything. They manipulate decks or hands. It's, just like a lot of them just kind of feel like they fizzle. There probably aren't as many ongoing effects that fizzle. Now, I think there are some, and we can actually just go ahead and look at the list here. I had it on Untapped, which is handy. Some stuff like, Hydra Stomper might fizzle, a Muse might fizzle because you just don't have moves or destroys or whatever, right? And some of the low-cost ones might not really feel that impactful. Also stuff like Wild Child could fizzle, but they're not like punishing necessarily. It's fine. But then there's just some like really, really insane hits when you get to the high cost cards in particular, right? You might hit a Gore and a Devil Dinosaur and an Iron Man, right? Like insane. Like that would be just instantly winning the spot, right? You'd have like plus 20 points that would then be doubled. So you'd have like a 40-point card sometimes, right? Really, anytime you hit Iron Man, you're probably going to be over the moon, honestly. But there are just like a lot of like kind of utility effects or things that just kind of work or offer a nice enough upside that like, you're not going to expect the moon, but you might reasonably expect the card to be kind of 4/8 or 4/10 in power. Cause here you picked up a speed or a Punisher or whatever, high rolls like Captain Carter also would be completely insane. But you get a Mr. Fantastic, hey, okay, this was already a 10 power card, assuming you played it in the middle cause you're smart and we're thinking about it. There are definitely, hits where you're like, okay, yeah, this was instantly a pretty solid card. And then there are occasionally going to be hits when you get the Iron Mans or whatever, where this is just completely nuts. And the nice thing is, at 4 costs, you will have time to sort of adapt to that. You also could play this in an ongoing deck, of course, too, to kind of double down on any synergies. Suddenly, you have an Onslaught coming in, a Mystique, which I don't even know exactly how those are going to interact with this. Maybe you end up getting doubles of the same 3 ongoing abilities, because Ramatut does do like repeat abilities, but you also could maybe get 3 new ones. I don't know how exactly that's going to work. I almost think you might get 3 new ones, so that could be risky. But anyway, you know, toss a Spectrum if you've got stuff like a Captain America in the mix already, you know, or, you know, that actually makes Captain America off Red Onslaught better, number one, but also, you know, he just by being an ongoing is a pretty solid option to exist in your deck because he might just get some points here and there. So that might be like a safe haven for Red Onslaught right off the bat. We almost see cards like Super Scroll kind of in those slots sometimes, but maybe Onslaught's just like a more proactive kind of, I don't want to say reliable version, but one that like always does at least something. And maybe you kind of play him in a risk averse way so he doesn't get too problematic in any given spot. But then like, can other decks actually use this as well? Maybe it's one of those things I could see like in an Airsham deck where you're happy to play this on turn 3 as a good 4-drop. It's really just like Ramatut in those scenarios. So where I'm landing on this card is like, does every deck play this? No, probably not, because I don't think the results are like reliably good enough. But is this a card that every deck's going to necessarily avoid? No, I don't think it backfires all that often. I think it's got like a degree of generalized playability that makes it fit into stuff maybe like an Airsham deck. I'm going to play it in some like random silly decks too, of course. But then Ongoing also becomes a reasonable shell for this, which Ongoing is a deck we haven't really seen much of late at the top of the meta, but it's had its moments. Like when Goliath came out for a while there, Ongoing was pretty good. Maybe Red Onslaught gives that deck another boost, for instance, is just an occasional powerhouse that kind of steals games because it does something crazy. Sometimes you need those sort of power spike cards in a deck that's otherwise really linear, which Ongoing decks tend to be kind of solved linear paths throughout a game. This could introduce a little bit of that chaos that gives it that edge that steals some cubes sometimes. So in other words, like pretty good, I think. Not an everyday, everywhere card, but still pretty good. Next up, though, is an everywhere, everyday kind of card. This card actually looks insane to me. This card looks crazy broken. This is Antipolar Magneto. Again, remember this logo is fake. I made this. It's a 6/9 with on reveal, add a 3 or 4 cost card from your hand to each other location. So this is a 6/9, really nice base stat line there. I mean, just solid chunky dude, way bigger than like a Dr. Doom, for instance. And it's presumably going to be adding cards to other locations that are also, by the way, bigger than Doom bots. You know, even the average 3-drop these days, you can expect 5 power, and presumably you're running some that have even bigger numbers in this deck. 4-drops, of course, way bigger, easily sometimes getting 7+ power, but I can imagine running like the big chonkers in here too that are kind of hard to play. You know, run an Akari, run a Crossbones or whatever, so that your Antipolar Magneto is just this crazy dump on the final turn of like 30+ points. It's almost like a build your own Hello, or you don't even have to build it. It just works. I mean, you have to have the cards in hand, which that could maybe be like the check on this card. It's like, you know, they're kind of saying, hey, this is balanced because you're keeping stuff in hand. I don't think it's going to be super tough, though, to structure a deck in a way where you just like, you know, you're playing things honestly enough on curve that you're just generally going to have some things left over in hand anyway. And it's usually going to be 3 and 4 costs if you really stuff your deck with enough of that mid game. You've even got like opportunities of like dump deck stuff where you know, this pulls like a Jubilee and a Dracula, and your 4-drops turn into even bigger dudes because you're, you know, running a dump deck with a ton of giant guys. And it's like you could dump 50 points on the final turn in that world. You've also got like whole ramp packages that can sustain having a lot of big guys, so maybe they don't need as many 3s, but they have a bunch of like 4s for your Antipolar Magneto. You've got crazy lines with this, with like repeating the on reveals. Imagine just playing a Wong and an Antipolar Magneto. Now that does demand even more stuff in hand, which that could ultimately end up being challenging the more you do this. But you know, I could see a game where you skip the first 4 turns, you play Sarah on turn 5, okay? Then you just play Magneto and Grandmaster on the final turn, and you win the game. Like, that's all you need, because Magneto would be going off and adding 4-drops everywhere, basically. You know, I guess, again, you need to have the right hand structure, but I think it's going to be rather trivial to get enough stuff into play for your Magneto to pay off, particularly when he's at 9 base power. Like, it just feels like such a big number to me. So in essence, this is just a crazy, like clean, efficient point dump that does not demand a ton of like setup or support. You know, I see it eclipsing cards like Dr. Doom. The only, you know, setup is just having the right stuff in hand, but I think that's trivial. It just looks very, very good to me. Whether it's 3s or 4s, honestly, I don't even know if that matters. 4s are generally going to be better, but you could see like 3-drop builds. There could be like Silver Surfer decks who use this. I don't know. Like, pull a Surfer from your Magneto, right? And buff your entire board along the way. I don't know. It's just like, it's doing so much. This card has to get played. This is going to be so strong. Really, really cool card. Just big, powerful, insane 6-drop. I think this is going to be absolutely everywhere if it stays at these numbers. So next up here is Superior Iron Man, who looks wicked cool, by the way. Again, I did make this logo, as you can tell. It is a 5/7, and it reads double cost reductions to this, but then also ongoing double power increases to this, which, man, Mother Ascani is over the moon. Because she gets to do both, right? If you get an Ascani Iron Man, I mean, now, of course, old Ascani would have been even more insane, but even post-nerf Ascani might still just be insane on Superior Iron Man, because I guess I haven't even, I feel like I'm forgetting what Ascani does now, but I think you'd still end up with like a 5/11 Superior Iron Man, and then also a 3/11 Superior Iron Man in hand, right? Which is crazy. If I'm getting the current Ascani, I haven't really played her since she got nerfed. But you know, that's just one example. Majestic Wingbeat, same story, right? Majestic Wingbeat would actually give you two, or not two. It would just give you one 3/11 Superior Iron Man in hand that then, of course, can still benefit on top of that from additional buffs of any kind. You know, run some Viv Vision along the way or whatever, and you might have, who knows, 20 power Iron Man or something by the end of the chain, and then be able to play it super cheap because of any given discount, whether that's Majestic Wingbeat or Sarah, whatever it is. I think even like active ones like Sarah should be still doubling the discount or cost reduction on this. So it just feels like one of those cards where it's like, how often does this actually just randomly become a 320 or even a 120 or whatever, because you've just somehow chained together locations or, you know, power gains. I'm assuming also kind of like passive location stuff. Like if you play this in Nidavellir, I'm assuming it's going to get +10. It doesn't necessarily have to be like permanent power creases. In other words, there's that one location that kind of does the same thing, whether it's ongoing or permanent, it still doubles them. So, you know, play this in a Nidavellir and get a ton of points too. There are a lot of really interesting ways to consider the kind of discount plus power increase to this, where it becomes just a crazy swing card, you know. Whether that's Ascani, Wingbeat, whatever it is, I think some deck will figure that out. You know, it is a pretty weak card if you don't hit anything. You know, it's just really dead at a base. You're not happy to play a 5/7, but the decks that are running this aren't going to have that problem. So it only takes maybe, you know, +2 power makes this pretty above rate for 5s. You're probably not really still excited to play a 5/11, but like it's reasonable at least to play a 5/11. You know, sometimes you're playing an Agamotto as a 5/10 or a 5/13. But then anything beyond that, right? As soon as it gets one cost discount, this card instantly becomes really interesting because, you know, even just a 3/7 is really, really cool. 0/7, of course, fine. But then when you get both going, man, you're really just off to the races on this one. I think you're going to see some like 0/20s out of this that are like, what the heck? That's insane. So I do think Superior Iron Man looks really, really good, and I'm kind of excited to build some decks around this one too, because we do actually have a lot of like weird little random cost discounters, including a card we're going to look at next. This is Kluh, who I'm really excited about because I actually somehow randomly stumbled upon Kluh. That's how you guys pronounce it. Like, I don't know, I was looking something up, like different Hulks or something. I forget why, I don't know. And I was like, Kluh, that's crazy. They just flipped his name backwards, which is exactly what I did for the logo. I just flipped his name backwards. I hope that's what they do for the real logo too. Anyway, Kluh here is a 5/10. On reveal, each player randomly gives a card in their hand -1 cost for each different cost among their cards in play. So the dream here, of course, is I'm a Wiccan player. I play my 1, 2, 3, 4. I play Kluh on 5. I think Kluh will probably count himself. Not 100% sure, but I think he might. And then you get basically -5 cost to your hand. You know, maybe 4 if it doesn't count himself, but still either way, like really significant. And a 5/10, like we just talked about, like that's playable enough, particularly when you talk about big discounts here that maybe enable you to play a couple extra cards. Thanks to the discounts, of course, hit that with the Iron Man, Superior Iron Man we just talked about. That might be an insane 1-2 punch where that gets discounted and becomes super, super easy to play, particularly if you've already buffed it a little bit. In combination with Wiccan in particular, like we talked about for that curve, like you could just play maybe your whole hand after you consider the extra energy and the significant cost reductions from Kluh. I was kind of thinking about this in comparison with like Warlock, the card where you have to skip your energy to discount your hand, right? Very similar mechanic, but this is a 5/10. Like you're getting 10 power instead of the Warlock. I mean, Warlock, is only 3 cost, but you don't have to skip. So he's kind of like 8 cost if you're taking the full skip. This is 5 cost and he's 10 power. So that like just feels way better. Now, the conversation is then, of course, around the symmetry of this, because your opponent is also getting this discount. Like, do they also benefit in a way that it makes Kluh too high risk? So couple things to consider there. Number one, is their deck structured in a way where they have a lot more unique costs? Because if they're, say, like a Silver Surfer deck, maybe everything costs 3, they don't really get as many discounts. Maybe just 1 or 2, like a 2-drop and a 3-drop, and that's all they get. Also, if you have priority, I guess, they wouldn't have had time to reveal some stuff, so that might also limit them a little bit. They were going to play like a 3 and a 2 on turn 5 and missed it, and then, miss a point here or there. But on top of that, you could also just run Mobius and use Mobius so that they're not able to get any cost reductions, and then you get all of your cost reductions, which I don't know if that's totally going to be worth it, but I could definitely see the Quicksilver, Domino, Mobius, Wiccan, Kluh curve blowing out a game if you do hit the Mobius in those instances, and that might be worth it, especially, if you have any other sort of Mobius tricks up your sleeve in your deck, which you might in this kind of deck. So I don't, in other words, think the symmetry of this effect is necessarily going to be all that big of a risk. I think you will generally have a couple advantages. Maybe the Mobius is like a distinct advantage, but even without it, you're building your deck in a way that you're going to hit more discounts, and you're probably building your hands in a way where the cards you're able to play are better able to utilize those discounts. In other words, if a deck has a bunch of like 5 or 6 cost cards, sometimes discounting those by 1 here, 1 there, whatever, it doesn't still let you kind of play 2 of them together because they still it's too much in total. Like the breakpoints don't line up so that you can play multiple 6s because they just didn't get discounted enough. But if you're running a bunch of kind of lower to mid cost stuff, if you have some 1s and 3s and stuff in hand, it's much more likely that these Kluh discounts will create some moments where you can actually squeeze in a few extra things. So it just becomes about deck structure, or if you're that Wiccan deck, perhaps you just have enough energy that you can still kind of piece together some good breakpoints there. So I think this will be asymmetrical in your favor, even though it is asymmetrical effect, which will make Kluh actually a pretty competitive card. I think there's some pretty cool lines possible with this one. A little bit of that question of how often am I hitting enough unique costs, but I don't think that's going to be a huge problem. I think some deck will piece this together and make this a pretty strong play. So next up here is Scarlet Witch, Queen of Chaos. This is a new 3/4. This is our 3rd Scarlet Witch at this stage, right? Start of turn, add an extremely random skill to your hand. It costs 0 this turn. Now, when we talk about extremely random skill, what that means is it's not just a skill from the collectible pool of skills. In other words, when you talk about collectible skills, what do we have? We have why can't I think? Astral projection, right, is a collectible skill. I'm literally just going to have to pull them up. Deafening Chord, Majestic Wing Beat, Web Sling, the Horde, right? Those are collectible skills. Normally in a game, if you randomly generated something, that's all you'd expect to get is stuff from the collectible pool. Extremely random here means you can also get skills from sort of token cards, which means skills that are generated from other things. So for instance, you could get Clea's Flames of the Faltine from your Scarlet Witch. You could get any of Agamotto's skills, get a Images of Icon for 0 energy, which is actually kind of insane. I did see from the data mines, maybe it's maybe a little bit curated. I don't know if what was I think Adamantium Infusion wasn't in there, for instance. So again, a little tweaked, but still a lot of possibilities. Get, Winds of Watum or whatever from Agamotto. That could be an insane hit. The Tau Mandala from the Ancient one, right? May not be a tool you have use for, you don't have ongoings, but could still actually be kind of an insane hit. So Basically getting some potentially really, really good cards, which makes this sort of a turn 3 Merlin where the sky is kind of the limit on how much energy you're going to be able to cheat on this. Imagine getting Bolts of Balfac for 0 off of your Scarlet Witch, Queen of Chaos. That is insane. Like, normally you're happy to play Bolts anyway, even though it costs 3 and you get +4, but now it costs 0 and you get +4 energy on a future turn. Like, completely nuts, right? There are some ridiculous results possible. I don't really think there's that many like bad results either. And you will still sometimes get those collectible skills, like they are also in the pool. But you know, even a Deafening Quarter or Majestic Wingbeat for 0 sometimes is gonna feel fine. Even a Web Sling for 0, like that could be sneaky and surprising and interesting. So I think basically the floor on this is great because just getting a free card to play every single turn, like just every turn you get a free card. Even if it sucks, it's free. Who cares? You know, like, yeah, you played a 3/4, but you're going to get something good by turn. You got basically turns 4, 5, and 6, right? So you're going to get 3 of these. I think personally it's gonna hit every game at least something that made a big impact that's going to be worth kind of the sacrifice of playing a 3/4 instead of a 3/7 or 3/8 or whatever you might want to play on turn 3 anyway. So also just the unpredictability, the high roll, the snap leverage on this is really, really high because you're going to know and your opponent's not going to have any idea what you get. This card looks nuts to me. I think this is very, very strong. A lot of decks also would be able to play this one successfully. There's even some like skill-based decks. We haven't even, you know, like, what is it? Nicholas, what's his name? Nicholas Frost? Nicholas something? What's his name, guys? It's got to be that, right? Nicholas Scratch. That's it. And then like even Mad Thinker, both of the like forgotten 1/2 dudes, like, you know, filling your hand for Mad Thinker, just playing a ton of skills for Nicholas Scratch. Maybe that's an angle too, honestly, with this much skill density. You get a Merlin down, you get a Scarlet Witch down. Just playing a lot of skills. But just insane card. I think this looks really strong. So moving on here to Friendly Neighborhood Carnage, which this is straight up one of my freaking thumbnails, dude. Way better than I can't hand draw all this stuff. This looks sick, dude. This is cool. I guess I would argue maybe a little bit more Spider-Man elements in here, but no, I can't complain. It looks so sick. What am I saying? It's so cool. Anyway, this is a 3/4. On reveal, move your other cards here to the right and +2 power for each move. So that means Carnage here is going to be gaining the +2 power, much like, you know, the Destroy Carnage. So this would basically have up to 3 cards moved, which makes this a 3/10, which is actually really nice. Like, that's a great efficient stat output there if you're moving 3 cards. And of course, the ability to move cards is great. Like, this is just a really efficient mover. You know, every little move benefit extra you have on this one's awesome. This becomes, I think, a super powerful tool for move decks. It's almost like kind of like Bounce and Move had a baby. It's only because, you know, you're like stacking one spot and then using this to move them instead of bounce them, right? It's almost like a Toxin and a Carnage, and, you know, like, it's cool. It's like that same vibe. It's actually a really cool card design, I think. It's also a bit like Fanfei, of course, but Fanfei, I think, on Activate, like, the Activate can theoretically be more useful. And it is kind of cool, too, how she's giving the power to the move cards as opposed to Carnage gaining the power. But at the same time, like, this just being cheaper and instant, I think is still going to be way better than Fanfei. Like, I just think the move decks often need flexibility, and one energy cost difference. And that kind of timing demand, too, can be tough. Like, you could play this, honestly, as early as turn 3, maybe just catch a couple dudes early, and that might be fine, but also dump it on turn 6, and it's still potentially going to be a great play. This kind of like, I don't know, mini Heimdall almost. And I'm going to say another thing. I don't think this has to be in a move deck only. I actually think this card might be just generally good. In the same way, I think Heimdall is generally underrated as a wide use card. In other words, I think the surprise factor of Heimdall is crazy underrated, and a lot of decks could be using that more effectively. This is a cheaper way to achieve the same goal, where it's like, hey, I'm going to potentially shift a bunch of power into a new spot, while still, you know, depositing a 3/10. I've had so many moments where I'm like, oh man, I'm overcommitted to this lane. Like, I've got 15 points here and I really only need 10, you know, and it's like, I need way more points, right? Well, this card comes along and solves that problem exactly, where it's like, you know, you overcommitted early, the opponent gave up that location, and suddenly Carnage comes along and says, no, actually, I'm going to win this for less points while moving a bunch of stuff right and surprising you. So I wouldn't be shocked if this card actually becomes playable as a kind of tempo card. There's even, it's like, I don't know, like Angela stack decks too, where this has got some interesting play. I mean, it would move the Angela too, but I don't know, like you could still trigger the Angela, move her, and then still have a spot available, that kind of thing, right? I just, like, my mind starts racing on all the different ways to use this. Move is the most obvious path, insane and move, but I think good beyond that too. Basically, honestly, is it even good in a bounce deck? Like, where you just, like, you know, you just use this as a way to gain a bunch of points and then move the stuff over to bounce later? Probably not, but, like, that's what I mean. There's so many possibilities with this card. It's just really cool and really strong. I think this is amazing. All right, so next up here is Rogue Scion of Division, and this one is definitely going to divide the player base. That's for sure. It's 5 energy, 5 power. On reveal, steal the text of the highest cost card in your opponent's hand, which, no, that says steal, not copy, which I think copy would already sometimes make this card pretty cool. You know, your opponent has some big awesome thing in hand and you steal its effect. Maybe that's an Aurora, maybe that's an Iron Man, you know, whatever. Doctor Doom, you know, those aren't probably the most compelling examples, but it would be okay. But the fact that you steal it means not only are you gaining their upside, you're taking it away from them. So, you know, imagine this hitting a Spectrum in an ongoing deck. Imagine it hitting an Aurora in an Aurora deck. Like, you'd be, maybe, you know, their Aurora might be worth, gosh, I don't know what, 16 points or something for them, maybe even more with Venus, where maybe you're stealing 16 or 24 points of upside from their final turn if they're an Aurora deck. And you might actually still gain like 6 to 10 yourself extra because you still have some on reveals or whatever random stuff on board that catches the Aurora buff. So against an Aurora, this could be like a 30-point swing. Would be an absolutely just game-defining instant win sort of play against an Aurora deck. Now, there are other decks where, you know, maybe this doesn't do as much. You know, I was looking at like the best decks right now. If it's a like techno-organic virus deck, you know, maybe you steal the text of a Sasquatch, and that doesn't really mean much of anything. I mean, I guess it would still limit them from playing a Sasquatch. Depending on the Sasquatch, though, it might already be discounted so that it's not actually the highest cost card in hand. That is a capital C, but I don't know how that'd work. But same thing with like Scar in that deck, you know, maybe a Wilson Fisk, but you might accidentally like steal a Starbrand's text in that particular deck. There's some like push decks where you'd like steal a Magneto's text, which, you know, that could actually be kind of interesting, but you wouldn't be gaining a lot of raw power out of it, and they'd probably still navigate that okay. Maybe an Affliction deck where you're stealing an Ajax. That would be pretty good, right? Really, you know, making their Ajax much worse, and you know, you'd probably get some points in an Affliction deck in that case. You might steal a Galactus First Steps effect. That one's probably pretty useless. Like, technically, you might limit its points a little bit, but it may have already scaled, and they care more about, like, point values. Any card that cares more about point values versus text is definitely going to be much worse for Rogue to steal. But, you know, there are still definitely some major upsides to this card, and certain metas and moments where it's going to be crazy. Think about Zombie Galacti. Insane counter to a Zombie Galacti deck, because it is always going to be the highest cost card in hand in that deck, and it will just instantly kill their deck. Like, once their Zombie Galacti's text is gone, forget it, the game is over. Rogue just instant wins that, which that's the kind of like toxic one that's going to divide people a ton. But I do think there's some cool stuff where, like, depending on the deck you play, you're going to be able to make some calculated gambles with Rogue, where like she may not be worth it in certain matchups. You just kind of keep her in hand. You don't do anything. Other scenarios is like, this is a Black Panther deck. Maybe they have the Arnim Zola in hand, and I should play this on top of my 4-drop so that I could duplicate my 4-drop, right? And there's like little calculations you're making throughout a game. But what if they don't have the Arnim Zola in hand, and then it's accidentally something else that screws you? You know, there is some fun there. But ultimately, I don't know. Like, as toxic as this is, as powerful as the swing is, this does still kind of feel like the kind of card that could get left out, just because, like, it is a high opportunity cost. There's a lot of risk, and it's a 5/5. So, you know, you're sacrificing a lot for this, and sometimes it'll whiff. In some matchups, it won't be good. So can a deck sort of sustain this card's downsides, that opportunity cost, often enough that it's worth it when it does make a big play, when you know it's going to work well? It's going to take the right kind of deck that's able to make room for this. Might have to be like a ramp deck, for instance, that can run a 5-cost card. Not everybody's just going to be able to toss this in freely. So I don't know, kind of a crazy card, kind of a scary card. I think maybe thankfully though, I don't actually see this one being a reliably high power card. I think this will get kind of left behind a lot, which is probably good news. All right, next up here is Entropic Havok. This is a new 3/3. Each turn, steal 1 bonus energy from your opponent if they have any. So this is the card that Quicksand always wanted to be. She was supposed to stop the energy cheat, and she was forgotten as soon as she was released. I have never seen a Quicksand played in the wild since the day she came out. I'm the only person I've ever seen play it myself. But I do think this card offers a more reliable way to counter energy gain decks. Quicksand is kind of all about that, you know, stopping it once, which I think surprised some people. I thought they thought it was going to work forever. It only stops it once, which is theoretically better for like big energy gain moments like Star-Lords or Fallen ones. But this is better against the more kind of normal energy gain we see from stuff like, you know, Luna Snow Ramp, Electro, even a Wiccan. This would steal 1 of the 2 extra energy. That's much, much more commonly seen than stuff like Fallen One or Star-Lord these days, right? But, you know, I guess technically if a Fallen One deck or Star-Lord deck became crazy, maybe Quicksand could gain the edge. But I think this is a far more commonly playable card. Now, note too, you know, this is stealing the energy, so it's not just limiting them, but you're also going to gain that energy yourself, which is definitely a nice upside. That said, I still think it's going to be hard to run this card. It's kind of in that same space as like a Mobius and Mobius, where you can kind of toss them into decks, but lists don't often do it. It takes really the right list to be able to afford to squeeze in that Mobius. Or having some other reason to run the Mobius, like a Pixie or whatever, where you're kind of benefiting and using it as a limitation for opponents. I think Havok here will feel exactly the same, where it's like, yeah, very occasionally the right meta or the right list will align, where it's like, yeah, he's worth it, I'll toss him in. I don't think this is a card you're running all the time forever, though. Some lists just won't want to sacrifice that spot in their deck because they just need more stuff to do, or the meta just won't demand it. I've also heard some people toying around with like using your own ramp cards in combination with this, where you're symmetrical ramp cards like Luna Snow, where you play a Luna to give them the extra energy and then you use Havok to steal it back. If this were a 2-drop, I'd be like, yes, I think that actually sounds awesome. As a 3-drop, it's like, I don't know. Do you really want to use Luna on 3 and then Havok on 4? You know, you play a 2-drop with it. It's not impossible, but it's like, doesn't really help. And it's like, again, a whole nother slot and 2 turns. And it's like, I think I'd rather just start playing my stuff with the Luna. I don't know. Like, it's not crazy. It's worth talking about, but I just don't really see that aligning all that well. Because you're sacrificing kind of 3 energy to gain back a couple extra. There might be some specific breakpoints where you need like 2 extra energy on turn 6 or something where it's worth it, but it just won't always line up. So I'm basically kind of shaky on this one. It feels like another one of those like fine tech cards that just weaves in and out of play, but very kind of limited play even when it does get played. And other times it kind of goes away for a while. So all that said, let's go ahead and rank these cards, the ones I think will be the best to the worst. My number 1 card is Antipolar Magneto. Number 2 is Scarlet Witch, Queen of Chaos. Number 3 is Friendly Neighborhood Carnage. Number 4 is Superior Iron Man. Number 5 is Kluh. Number 6 is Red Onslaught. Number 7 is Rogue, Scion of Division. Number 8 is Entropic Havok. And there you go. This is one of the sickest months maybe ever. I know not everybody loves the reuse of characters, and I honestly don't necessarily always either, but like, man, this card's freaking cool looking. This card honestly is freaking cool looking. I mean, yes, it should probably be a variant of Iron Man. I have a feeling it probably already was a variant of Iron Man. I don't know. He looks cool to me, man. This is the sickest looking card I've ever seen in Marvel Snap. This guy is this is a new character and I love him. Like, I don't know, man. These are just cool. Like, this actually just looks like straight up Scarlet Witch to me. So this definitely needs some kind of visual variation. I don't know if I love this one. It just looks like the normal character. And that one's kind of bad, but this also just kind of looks like Rogue. Like, yeah, she got a different outfit on, but like, I mean, it's just Rogue. This also just looks like Havok. He's got a weird, like, Phantom of the Opera, but that's it. Anyway, just the card designs this month are insane. Some of the characters are insane. Power levels seem really cool. Designs are fun. Like, A+ month for Marvel Snap. They were really cooking with this one. I could actually see this bringing some players back. Even some of these cards are so cool. I don't know, man. This is really fun. So anyway, share your thoughts on these cards down below. Thanks as always for watching, and I guess I will see you around.